The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Oriental Magic by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. Chapter 17. The Occult Art in China. It is sublime to be master of the world. Emperor Qianlong, AD 1764. China, with the oldest living civilization, claims a magical system and ritual dating back to the highest antiquity. Two main types of sorcerers are to be found in Chinese history: the official Wu, or magicians, and the freelances, or those who retained their power through popular as opposed to official support. Magicians were for centuries employed by the state. Their hostility to independent practitioners was traditional and intense. It was in the Han Dynasty that court magicians reached their greatest power. From the 17th to the 3rd centuries BC, both male and female Wu wielded considerable authority with the emperors. Three things characterize Chinese occultism: the widespread belief by all classes in the efficacy of occult practices, the belief that most phenomena are dominated by specific spirits, and the mysticism of Lao Tse. The present magical framework of China and of the Chinese communities stretching throughout Southeast Asia can be traced from the Mongolian origins of primitive Chinese religion, Shintoist cults, through esoteric forms of Taoism to the current form, which in turn has deeply affected the occultism of the West. The shamanism and witch doctor practices of the tribes of Mongolia and those of their related communities, the Eskimos, show traces of being the parent of Chinese Shinto. In its turn, Shinto traveled to Japan, and there are strangely comparable phenomena well known in Europe as well. Among these are mediumship, spirit writing, and the forms of certain charms. Shinto seems to have become established in China about 3,000 years ago, and is an adaptation, made in the Zhou dynasty, of the magical practices of Mongolian northerners. It is from this that both the Chinese and Japanese systems have derived their conception of spirits. These are carefully organized. First comes the One Supreme Intelligence. Under it are the angelic or celestial intelligences. Below them come the spirits of the planets. Next are the spirits of the dead who may be worshipped. They are invoked in magical rites and are thought to cooperate with the higher intelligences or gods. Confucius appeared upon the scene when the people of China were feeling that this form of religion, animism, was somehow in need of readjustment. His tenets were almost entirely speculative and philosophical, and he was Lao Tse's contemporary, though his senior in age. Lao Tse, on the other hand, worked for the reconstruction of Chinese philosophy through mysticism rather than logic. As an imperial librarian, he had access to books of ancient philosophy, which seem to have exerted a great influence on him, and he often quotes from them. His followers seem to have pursued this link with the past back to a point where magical rites and thaumaturgy were an important part of the ancient Shinto system. There are four main influences in Chinese philosophy. Shinto, with its pantheon and unashamedly magical rites, battled with the negativity of Buddhism imported from India. There was no decisive victory for either. Confucius, like Plato and Aristotle, was a superb political and ethical thinker, but his precepts did not exercise a sufficiently powerful influence to overcome the older cults. Lao Tse's system, to some extent rooted in Shinto and containing all the apparatus for development into a magical cult, ceased to be a reformation and served as the vehicle through which the magical operations of tradition were passed down from a now defunct Shinto. Thus it is today. In his book on the Tao, Lao Tse frequently refers to the power of the Tao and the secrets in it, and similar obscure phrases have given adequate scope for the development of occult practices. While Confucius and Lao Tse met and are reported to have liked one another, subsequent rivalry between the two schools grew until it reached the proportions of almost open hostility which are evident today. Confucians will have nothing to do with the teachings and practices of Taoism. They repudiate the mystical doctrines and occult rites alike. Buddhists, on the other hand, have their own mystical and magical systems, which do not differ radically from those of the Tao, at least in externals. These pages are mainly concerned with the occult phenomena practiced and guarded by the Chinese of the Taoist persuasion. Remarkable in the study of magical practices, there is no disguising the fact that many of the operations found in European black books, and known to be undertaken by Western sorcerers, are paralleled in Chinese magic. In the case of Hindu magic, for example, relatively few links with European sorcery can be found. Yet a Chinese wizard of the Middle Ages and his Western counterpart might well have understood each other's motives and even certain rituals. Willow wands and water divining, spells cast through wax images, superstitions connected with builders, and a whole host of other points immediately spring to the mind. There may be some Semitic connection here, for most of the European magical rites are derived from such books as the Key of Solomon, the Sword of Moses, or the Two Alberts, well known to be rooted in the Jewish Assyrian Chaldean systems. It is possible that some of the rites may have entered Europe through the Arab impact in Spain and Italy. Certainly English and other sorcerers went to the reputed occult universities of Spain to study the Arabian system. And the early contact of the Arabs with China is well known. Even today, certain superstitions about not destroying paper, an item brought to Europe by the Arabs, are shared by Chinese and Arabs alike, but by no other peoples. Magic mirrors. Magic mirrors are among the most important instruments of the art in China. Ko Hong, one of the highest authorities on this, regarded them as essential in the constant battle against demons, and it must be remembered that these spectres are at the bottom of almost everything. Protection against evil, death, and disease can only be secured through combating the demons which control these phenomena. Success, riches, and victory, the so-called positive advantages, can likewise be obtained through the cooperation of the spectres within whose domain these subjects fall. The use of magical mirrors was twofold. Reflected within them was to be seen the true shape of the demon, which only revealed under compulsion. Once he had thus been seen, his powers were severely curtailed, and his attacks on the possessor of the mirror ceased. Celestial happiness also attended the owner of one of these priceless objects. One man actually became emperor through its aid, as we are told in the Sea King Tsa Ki. Wang Tu, of the Sui dynasty, published a rare booklet in which the virtues and importance of the magic mirror are exhaustively described and illustrated by his own mirror, which he received from the great Hui Sheng himself. "Whenever you bear it in your hand," declared this savant, "hundreds of demons will flee." Decorated with a unicorn, animals of the four quarters of the universe, and other mystical symbols, it contained a representation of the order of the world according to the Taoists inscribed thereon. Whenever the sun shines on this mirror, the ink of those inscriptions permeates the images which it reflects, so that they cannot possibly show any false shapes. It was in the second year of the Ta Ye period, AD 606, that Wang Tu started out for the Changnan country to test this amazing object's virtues. The author claims that his chance came soon. Staying at a wayside inn, he learnt that a mysterious girl lived there, and the innkeeper wanted to know something about her. Fetching his mirror, he saw a spectre reflected therein, none other than the mystery girl. Coming to him, she begged him not to kill her by means of the magical mirror. Confessing that she was 1,000 years old, she admitted to having been cast out by a demon who owned her, and after various adventures, found herself there. Deciding that she wanted to die, she drank some wine, changed into her true form of a vixen, and expired on the spot. How is a magical mirror made? No Chinese book of any antiquity gives the recipe, but Shi Chen gives a clue. Any mirror which is sufficiently antique, he says, and large enough, when hung in the house, is capable of detecting spirits. It should be kept covered until needed, and not used for any other purpose. An immense number of stories are told of the virtue of these mirrors in China. Charms and spells. Charms are probably more widely used in China than anywhere else. One of the guarded books of charm writers is the classic of Ko Hung, who wrote in his Pao Po Tse in the 4th century. Written charms, he says in the 17th section, are especially efficacious for travellers, particularly in the mountains, where spirits frequently reside. Peachwood, with its magical properties, is the material used in the magical pen for inscribing the characters, while red cinnabar paint is the pigment. So powerful are such amulets that they defeat not only all ghosts and spectres, but hostile animals and men as well. Some of these protective spells took the form of 5 arrows, which were also used in a similar way by the Moors of Spain during the Arab period. Charms are written in a strange form of script known as thunder writing or celestial calligraphy. While many of the characters resemble conventional Chinese ones, some of it cannot be interpreted by the usual methods and may be meaningless. It is interesting to note here that the Chinese method of indicating the stars and planets in vogue among charm writers are found in a number of the books of sorcerers published in Europe during the Middle Ages. If these have been copied from Chinese originals, the intermediate links are missing. Women in China greatly favor a triangle of gold or silver with 2 swords suspended from the outer angles. This is considered to contain within it all the fortune which any woman needs or desires. Charms, when written, are always inscribed on red or yellow paper. Sometimes a picture of an idol is printed or written upon this paper with red or black ink. It is then pasted up over a door or on a bed curtain, or it is worn in the hair, or put in a red bag and suspended from the buttonhole. Or it may be burnt, and the ashes mixed with tea or water and drunk, so that its influence permeates the body. Many houses have 8 or 10 of them, suspended in the eaves and other places where evil influences are thought to reside. This habit of drinking the water in which a charm has been steeped is also widespread in the Middle East. Bells are regarded as a powerful charm, being also used in the rituals of magic as practiced by Chinese wizards. This belief in the power of bells is thought to have come from India. Certainly it was widespread in Arabia when Muhammad prohibited the superstitious ringing of bells, which had been imported into the Hejaz from Byzantium, and is still known among the Yazidi devil worshippers of Kurdistan. Raising thunder by means of charms is considered an important part of the Taoist system of magic. Such spells must contain in written form the representation of the characters thunder and lightning. The intention here may be to smite spirits which are causing trouble, or merely to raise thunder and storms to punish someone meriting it. An example of the versatility of the thunder charm is contained in a story of Shun Yu Qi in the 4th century AD, as given in the Standard History of the Qin dynasty. Kaoping is a place in Shenxi where Liu Ju, while asleep one night, was bitten on the middle finger of his left hand by a rat. He consulted Shun Yu Chi, who said, "This beast wanted to kill you, but could not succeed. I shall now kill it in retaliation." And having drawn around his pulse a red line, and 3 inches from it the character which is a component of the Chinese figures expressing thunder and lightning, 1 inch and 2/10 square, he ordered him to leave his hand uncovered while asleep. Next morning a big rat lay dead close by. This character is a modification of the sign denoting the roll and flash of thunder and lightning, and occurs in very many Chinese charms. The whole system of writing charms and their combination is extremely simple. Only unfamiliarity with the meanings of the Chinese characters themselves makes them appear inexplicable. An understanding of the fundamental characters and a list of the forms of celestial calligraphy covers most of the forms encountered in the usual charms. Exceptions to this are those written in fragmentary script and those which have been copied from archaic versions. The curving line wriggling downwards from such charms is the magician's version of the normal character for a bow, symbolically used to smite the spirit or other object of wrath. The signs for happiness and felicity are used to counter the supposed evils which are being combated. Those for long life, peace, and prosperity are likewise employed against spirits and powers which bring illness, adversity, and poverty to bear upon their victims. It is natural from this to expect the signs for murder and slaying with a sword to appear in talismans whose arcane power is believed to act in this manner against evil forces. Thus, a combination of some of these ideographs will, when interpreted, read sometimes like this: "Murder, death with a sword like lightning against this spectre. Let happiness, prosperity, and order come." In addition to these, the inclusion of planets, such as the sun and moon, ensure that the effect is deepened, for both the sun and moon are reputedly powerful in charms. Light and fire are 2 further potent powers which ensure the complete victory of the spell against anything. For this reason, these characters are widely used. The sign for east, when repeated many times, invokes all the power of the purifying sun which rises from the east, multiplying by its repetition the force of the rays. These powers are not seen simply as abstract forces. In the Taoist system, each sign stands for a particular god. Preeminent among these is said to be Chang Tao Ling, the founder of the cult. Hence his surname, Chang, is often found upon the reputedly most potent charms. Chieftainship of the Taoist magical sect is vested in Chang's lineal descent, who lives in the Guangxin department of Jiangxi province, being greatly revered, and carrying the mandate of Chang himself. His charm is perhaps the most potent of all, and serves for any purpose. Its action depends upon the desires of the possessor. For this reason, 2 people with the same charm may believe that it will bring them, respectively, wealth and relief from disease. A third may use it to ensure abundant crops, or a woman may carry it for the purpose of bearing a male child. Another form of spell consists of sentences written on strips of paper, commemorating some event connected with the result desired by the magician. Thus we find, "Let General Li Kuang shoot his arrows here." The general was a redoubtable warrior of the 2nd century AD, whose victorious campaigns against the Huns have passed into legend. By association of ideas, and hence the supposed association of forces, this charm is considered to be immensely powerful. Charms not containing the names of gods are fewer, but they do exist. In all cases, such talismans must contain the characters Shen or Ling. The theory behind this is that of concourse. It is believed that the crowding together of many people produces a certain power of its own. This concentrated power is stronger than that of either single people or spectres. While it is not always possible for the wizard to collect a number of people to concentrate upon a desired effect, he can achieve a similar result by putting this desire into writing. Hence the use of the character hiao or wow, which signifies shouting by many mouths. In addition to being inscribed with a peachwood pen on paper of imperial yellow, certain other requirements must be observed in the making of charms. Foremost among these is the uttering of powerful spells. At the same time, the magician concentrates on a particularly powerful god, generally a thunder deity. One spell considered most effective if repeated 7 times when making the charm is this: Heart of heaven, eyes of heaven, core of heavenly light, defeat the spiritually powerful light of the earth, sun, and moon, produce your light. Quick, quick, let the law and the command of the 5 emperors be obeyed. Following this, the talisman is vigorously blown upon, in exactly the same manner as the pre-Islamic Arabs blew upon the knots in which they tied forces for their form of the death spell. A number of other miscellaneous requirements must be fulfilled to make a charm effective. The pen or brush must be new, the ink complete in purity, and also never before used. Really powerful magicians can weave spells merely by describing the characters in the air with their forefinger. Historical and legendary instances of Chinese miracle workers are many. One of the most famous was the great Ming Qiongyan, the sorcerer of the Tang dynasty. It is related that he was tested by the emperor Cao Tsung in the following way. The emperor, in order to test his powers, caused a cave to be dug and put some servants therein to make music. Calling Qiongyan, he asked what good or evil this music portended, and whether he could stop it for him. Qiongyan then wrote 2 charms on peachwood, fixed them in the ground over the cave, and immediately the music stopped. The musicians declared that they had seen a strange dragon, which had frightened them so much that they could not continue. One of the most famous wizards of China was Qi Xiang, who was asked to give a demonstration of his power before the king of Wu, and some of whose feats are reported in the works of Ko Hong. The monarch having expressed a desire to eat fish, the magician dug a small pit, filled it with water, and an excellent sea fish was caught. While it was being cooked, His Majesty complained that there was none of the famous ginger of Szechuan to eat with it. Immediately, continues the chronicler, Qi Xiang wrote a charm, which he enclosed in a green bamboo stick, and handed to one of the king's couriers. Then he was instructed to close his eyes and ride away. As soon as he did so, the messenger found that he was in that distant land, bought the ginger, and closed his eyes once more. In a flash he was back at the court, just as the fish was ready. It is hardly surprising that, backed with a huge number of such tales, which are in most places implicitly believed, tens of thousands of charms are in active use among the Chinese. Spiritism. In the 19th century, the strange resemblance between Chinese and Western mediumistic phenomena was first described. Confined to the intellectual classes, these practices were mainly devoted to discovering facts about the future, particularly in relation to whether a certain course of action should be taken. Where automatic writing was the method of communication, a Peachwood pencil was used. Willow wood is also very often employed. It had to be made from a twig which, when on the tree, faced eastward. Before cutting, a magical formula was pronounced, composed of 4 lines, each of 4 syllables. Magical pencil, powerful one, each day bearer of subtle power, I cut thee to tell all. The word signifying spirit of the clouds is cut in the tree's bark, on the side opposite to the twig. Following this, the characters for wondrous revelation of the heavenly mysteries are cut below the first hieroglyphics. The chosen twig has to be so curved as to form a hook at one end. After being fitted into a small piece of wood, some 6 inches in length, it is placed in the hands of the man or woman chosen as the medium. All the participants in the ceremony must be in a state of ritual purity, wearing clean clothes, and having observed a fast. 2 long tables are placed side by side in the hall which forms the scene of operations. One of these holds the altar, bearing wine, fruit, and sweetmeats, while the other is sprinkled with powdery red sand, rolled smooth to ensure the legibility of the characters which the spirit pen will trace upon it. Completing all these operations before nightfall, the officiating magician then writes on a card his prayer to the great royal bodhisattva, stating that the sacrifices are ready and asking that spirits be sent. The exact location of the house, together with the name of the enquirer, are meticulously added, in order that the spectre may be able to make his way there without undue difficulty. This card and a quantity of gold paper is then carried to a shrine dedicated to this deity and burnt before his altar. After returning home, the owner must write his name and address clearly on another card, which is fixed to one of the doorposts. When evening falls, several of the supplicants make their way to the door, burn gold paper, and make a number of bows to welcome the spirit to the house with due ceremony. A short pantomime is then enacted. The invisible spirit is conducted into the hall, candles and incense are lighted in his honor, and a chair is pulled up to one of the tables for his use. While this ceremonial is being observed, the medium approaches the sand-strewn table. The handle of the twig rests on both hands, while the end touches the surface of the sand. The supplication to the spirit follows in some such form as this: "Great Spirit, if you have arrived, please write 'arrived' in the sand on this table." Immediately after the medium has finished speaking, the pencil traces the requisite character in the sand. The whole company then asks the spirit to be seated, and the deity, who is thought to have brought him, is offered another chair. Everyone now bows before the empty chairs, offering a little wine and gold paper. The ritual proper always begins in the same way. The medium invokes the spirit with the words, "Great Spirit, what was your august surname? What was your honorable name? What offices did you hold? And under which dynasty did you live on earth?" The magic pencil traces the answers in the sand at once, and the séance has begun. The session is now open for individual questions. These are put by writing them on a piece of paper and burning them together with a slip of gold paper. As each piece is burned, the answers appear in the sand tracing. The end of the reply is indicated by the character, "I have finished." Frequently, the replies are in poetic form. If a message cannot be understood, the pencil again traces its writing upon the tabletop until it has been deciphered. When someone has correctly read the message aloud, the pencil writes, "That is right." After each reply, the sand is smoothed in preparation for the next. During this proceeding, the strictest rules of decorum are observed. If anyone shows any sign, however small, of irreverence or uneasiness, the pencil rapidly writes a rebuke on the sand. As the medium balances the pencil between his 2 upturned palms and appears not to exert any control over it, an explanation for this phenomenon by means of ordinary reasoning seems difficult. All the Western observers who have been present at such séances seem at a loss to understand how the pencil writes, particularly because the method of holding it would make it extremely difficult for the medium to manipulate the stick. It is considered most important that, while the table is being prepared for the next question and the sand smoothed, the entire company should humbly thank the spirit for his kindness and help. His poetical ability is also praised. With true modesty, the pencil replies to these compliments by writing the words "absurd" and similar self-effacing formulae. After midnight, the spirit begins to write phrases asking for permission to depart. He is invariably asked to stay just a little longer. His reply is that he must go at once. He also thanks the company for their kindness and hospitality. When it is apparent that he will not stay, the assembled company chorus, "If there was any want of respect or attention, Great Spirit, we entreat thee to forgive us this sin." He is then conducted to the door, accompanied by more burning of gold paper, and is seen off the premises with bows and prostrations. The most excellent form of ki, or magical pencil, is said to be one cut from the east or southeastern part of the tree. The twig should be commanded to give clear and accurate information. It is sometimes forked, like a water diviner's rod, painted red, and about 1.5 feet in length. Variations of the ritual allow the red sand to be replaced by incense ashes or bran. Other methods of holding the fork include that in which the medium himself grips one arm of the twig, while any other member of the company holds the other. The writing instrument, when not in use, is kept with great honor in silk or other good material, always red in color. Many finely carved examples exist. An instrument capable of passing on information from the respected spirits of the other world, it is felt, should be treated with the dignity which must obviously be its due. The remarkable life which is felt in the pencil, once the spirit has appeared to get control of it, can only be compared to the twitching of the willow or hazel wand in an accomplished water diviner's hands. The reason for ascertaining the spirit's true name and offices is because an undesirable spectre or demon may well get hold of the fork and write misleading messages, but he is unable to impersonate a good spirit and can thus be detected by his signature. When such attempted deception does take place, it is seldom for more than a few moments, and the true spirit expels the demon of his own accord. Many strange happenings are reported from such seances. In some cases, a mighty deity may arrive and declare his presence, indicating that he is in need of certain sacrifices before his altar. Great men of the past apparently here communicated by this method, and their signatures and messages have been obtained by means of red ink on the brush passing over a sheet of paper. Even an ordinary brush has been used for this purpose, when the power of the visiting spirit has been felt to be strong. If it is desired to consult any specific god, his image is brought into the house where the session is to be held, and honoured with offerings for a few days before the date fixed for the interrogation. It is considered much more difficult to conjure gods into the pen than the spirits of those who have already passed away, and who are people more connected with the earth. Mediums of the ki in China do not form a distinct class. Often a person is chosen at random to hold the magic stick, but the interpreters of the writings upon the sand or paper are highly esteemed. Due to the difficult nature of Chinese calligraphy, relatively few people can interpret with certainty some of the hurried scrawls of the pencil. This art is thought to date back to a very early era, and a great many predictions by this means are on record. One is contained in a small book of the Tang epoch by Li Xun. Its title, On Strange Matters Collected and Written Down, is amply vindicated by this extract. When the High Minister of State and feudal Prince of Wei was only a secondary officer in Pingchu, before he had been on duty there for 10 months, suddenly a man from the country named Wang politely applied at the gate of his mansion for an interview. The prince told him to sit down, and he said that he was a man who could find out things from the unseen world. As the prince did not show much interest, the visitor bade him place a table in the principal inner room with some paper, a writing pencil, incense, and water. Then he told him to lower the mat which hung over the door and silently pay attention to what would happen. After a while, Wang said, Now let us go and see. And they found 8 large characters on the paper, with an explanation in ordinary square writing, reading thus: Your dignity will be that of the very highest minister. You will live to your 64th year. Wang now hastily asked permission to go home, and it was never ascertained whither he went. In the Huichang period, AD 841 to 847, the prince was 3 times registered as a grandee of the very highest official rank. He died in Hainan just at the age which Wang had ascertained. The Emperor Shi Tsung of the Ming dynasty, reigning from 1522 to 1567, regulated most of the court affairs by means of spirit writing, in spite of the fact that in general the rulers of that house were greatly opposed to this form of divination. This podcast is copyright 2018, the Idries Shah Foundation.